begin recording. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to everyone who is joining us for this webinar, How to Run for Local Public Office for Midlothian Public Library. I am Jennifer Cottrell. I'm the director of the Midlothian Public Library, and it was my idea to host this webinar because we are having municipal elections coming up in April. And one of our outgoing trustees, Brenna Baker, who is one of our panelists tonight, is not running again for library trustee, which I'm sad about. But that also means that there is a space for library trustee for which there is no incumbent running for a position, which makes it a great opportunity for a newcomer to step on the board. We also have 2 additional spots that are up for election this April, and we have 2 trustees who are incumbents who are running, but of course everybody runs on an equal playing field. So we have 3 spots for library trustee that are open this April. And a lot of times in local politics, no matter what village or city you might be in, a lot of times newcomers don't know how to get involved. It's the same people who always volunteer for the same things, the same people who always get asked to do the same things. So I wanted to hold a webinar to kind of open it up to the public, to make the process a little bit more transparent, to give the opportunity for newcomers and new faces to figure out how the process works and if the process of running for a public office might be for them. Our speakers today are outgoing library trustee Brenna Baker, current village trustee Sandra Crowley, who is not up for re-election this cycle, and our village clerk for Midlothian, Alan Moskal. Before we get started with our program, I would like to find out a little bit about those of you in the audience. So I have a couple of polls, and the first poll, I would like to know where you live. Do you live in Midlothian? Do you live in another community served by District 143 or 228? Another community in Cook County? Another community in Illinois? Or outside of Illinois? And it appears that everyone's voted, so I will end the polling and share the results. And it seems like roughly half the participants here are from Midlothian. Some are from another community in Cook County, and we have 1 person from outside Illinois. That is cool. Welcome. And let's go to question number 2. What type of office are you interested in running for? Village trustee, library board, park district board, school board, other, or none? You're just here to learn, and any way is fine. See, we have a 7th participant who just joined us. We're doing a brief poll if you'd like to join in. And we will end this poll now and share the results. And as I expected, the majority of people are here because they're interested in library board, and a couple are here just to learn. So that is great. All right, so just a reminder to those of you who are attendees, or if any of you have just joined us, there is a Q&A button at the bottom. Also the option to raise your hand if you'd like me to unmute you to ask a question. First, we're going to hear from Brenna, and then Sandy, and then Al will give a more nuts and bolts presentation about the legal ins and outs of running for public office. So without further ado, I will speak with Brenna. Brenna, to start off, what motivated you to run for public office, and why did you pick library board?
Well, my children and I were very avid users of the library. I've been a trustee for the library for 13 years now. And back when I started, I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and we were very into being at the library every week. That was kind of our second home, and we just really enjoyed the atmosphere and the ability to really have resources available to us, that met our learning needs at that time. And I was actually I wasn't really motivated to run at all. I was actually approached by the children's librarian because there was a open position on the board. They were looking for somebody to fill it as an appointment. And I thought about it for a while, and I went, that sounds kind of interesting. It seems like a good way to get involved in the community and to help to further the goals of our library, and maybe bring in some new programming, and also to kind of use my skills. By that time, I'd been a stay-at-home mom for 4 years and was looking for a way to kind of really get involved and keep my business skills up as well. So I went to a board meeting and kind of introduced myself and submitted a letter, and the current board voted and called me a few days later, and I was appointed to that position to fill a 2-year term that was remaining. And then by the end of that 2-year term, I kind of felt like that was my place and where I was meant to serve. And the rest is history. And it's been 13 years now, and here I am, ready to give somebody else another chance to do that same mission.
Great. So you were appointed the first couple of years you served, but then the first time you actually ran for public office, what did you find challenging or confusing about that process, and who did you turn to get the answers that you needed?
Gosh, honestly, it wasn't very challenging or confusing at all. The library director really supplied the paperwork for us at our meeting if we were willing to run again. I would say the most challenging thing was really just kind of putting yourself out there. You do have to go and get an amount of signatures from residents of Midlothian, and I think that's kind of the challenging part is being able to approach people to say, hey, would you be willing to support me to run for this position? So it is kind of one of those things that put yourself out there in that manner. And then as far as that of just really making sure that you submitted the signatures on time, I think the hardest part was just trying to make sure I was at the right office at the Markham Courthouse to be able to submit things. So it was a really easy process.
Once you ran and were elected, or when you were appointed, what has been most rewarding or enjoyable about serving on the library board?
I think just being able to be a part of something in our community, and just knowing that I'm playing a part in providing access for our community to have things such as wonderful books and media and just an outlet to be able to go somewhere and have things that they may not have access to elsewhere.
And has there been anything that has been frustrating or least enjoyable about serving in a public office?
Well, library trustees, we really don't get that much notice, so it's a nice low key thing. Sometimes it can be frustrating from the fact of really not having as much community engagement as you'd like to see sometimes. But still, just again knowing that our services, they're there for people when they need them is what it's all about, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. How much time commitment and responsibility has serving on the library board been for you? Has it been difficult at all to balance these responsibilities with your family life or work responsibilities?
Not really. I mean, the commitment, the minimal commitment is, the 1 hour a month to come to a board meeting. Several of us do serve on different committees. Some of them are a little bit more involved than others. I am on our long range plan committee, so there are some other meetings where we would meet throughout the year to just be able to assess the needs of our library building, and as far as for our plans going forward, based in some different categories. And really aside from that, and really spending a few hours to prep for the meeting ahead of time and make sure that we're up to speed on the policies that are being presented, and being able to have the big picture for when you go into that meeting, just to be prepared. That's about it. It's not really a big commitment at all.
Okay. And looking back, is there anything you wish you knew ahead of time about running for public office or serving in a public office? Or do you have any advice that you'd give to somebody running for office for the first time?
I wish I would have probably have thought to have done it sooner or gotten involved sooner. I grew up in a family. My mother was very involved in politics, and she actually served on a board when I was little. So I did spend a lot of time in our public library in my hometown, but really just never thought it was something for me until I did get involved, and it's a very rewarding experience to be able to serve your community in that way.
Great. Thank you, Brenna. And you've
You're
served
welcome.
very well, and we will miss your service at the end of your term.
Thank you.
Okay, Sandra Crowley, Village Trustee. Sandy, what motivated you to run for public office, and why did you pick Village Trustee?
Well, I think first of all, I had been in Midlothian for about 25 years. I was able to raise my children here. They went to school here. And over the years, you know, you look at things, you take part in the community, and you feel like there's things you would like to see different or things you would like to do different. And so for me, that was kind of a motivating factor. I wanted to give back. My children are grown. I'm a grandma now. So I wanted to give back to my community. I wanted to be able to give back to, you know, I had a little bit more time. I had the ability to commit some more. So I wanted to give back to my community.
What did you find challenging or confusing about the process of running for public office the first time you ran? And who did you turn to get the answers you needed?
Well, like Brenna, my first term I was appointed. I actually took Alan Moskal's spot when he became the clerk. Our current mayor appointed me, and that was back in 2017. I feel like the most challenging, I think I have to agree with Brenna, the process is pretty straightforward. There's some good resources out there. But putting yourself out there, getting signatures, knocking on people's doors, and really putting yourself out there and saying, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing and why, it really opens up to a different side of you. As far as helping, I mean, our clerk is amazing. He's also a personal friend of mine. So, I mean, he was wonderful. Anytime I had a question, he was able to answer and help me. And so I was very fortunate with that.
And what would you say has been the most rewarding or enjoyable thing about serving in public office for you?
I think for me, helping people, being able to, I talk to a lot of residents, and I feel like, there's a lot of people who don't know where to turn for help. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to get things done. They don't know how to solve their problems. And being the trustee right now for the police department, I feel that puts me in a really good position to be able to, kind of be the conduit, to be able to get people in touch with the right people, to be able to make sure that people who would kind of be left out get taken care of and get their needs addressed.
Nice. What has been most frustrating or least enjoyable about serving in public office?
I had a list because I had a feeling you were going to ask that. And then I figured there were a couple of things I should probably, no, just, I think a couple things. I think the most frustrating has been the fact that early on, there's no roadmap or class or process that you can take. There's no, my husband told me not to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's no Evelyn Wood guide to how to be a trustee. Nobody comes up and says, okay, this is what you do. This is how you do it. You really have to kind of find your own niche. You have to figure it out. You have to dive in with both feet. You have to see what, you have to learn what's going on. And there's a lot of trial and error and a lot of lumps and bruises along the way that, you start to learn. And I think that's probably was something that was difficult for me because I'm a little regimented. I like to have things in a certain order. I like to be able to know what I'm doing. And trying to figure it out while you're doing it. You know, you're not a trustee one day, and then all of a sudden you're a trustee, and you got to know all this stuff. So I think that was a little frustrating for me. I think also maybe a little bit learning the relationships and being able to, you know, again, find your niche, find your role, and work with people and know who it is that you need to work with to get things done. But I think once you get that done, I think it kind of, it propels you.
Mm-hmm. There's a learning curve, but then you hit your stride.
Yes.
How much time commitment and responsibility has serving as village trustee been for you? And has it been difficult to balance these responsibilities with work and family?
Well, I personally feel, I think it's a large time commitment, especially at the beginning. It was really difficult to balance because to me, some of the things that you get involved with, some of the projects you're on, some of the things you have to do, you know, they really can't wait. You know, people are depending on it and our village is depending on it. And so you do kind of have to find a way to balance. And there's times where you have to turn off your phone and you have to, you know, you have to go to your grandkids' baseball games. But you also have to, you know, it was difficult to find a balance. I feel for a village trustee, I feel I probably put maybe 15 to 20 hours a week, you know, depending on the week. You know, some week we have meetings every week. So, you know, you're preparing, you know, our meetings can go anywhere from an hour to sometimes 3. You know, and the documents, you know, reviewing the documents, you're really getting your documents anywhere between Friday and Monday for your Wednesday meetings. So your weekends are really spent looking over documents, especially if it's a busy week. We also, like the library, have committees. I have, I think 3 committees right now, which it's probably one of the funnest things I do on the village is I love my committees. I have great people and great volunteers. Actually, Jen, that's how I met you.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think, you know, if you want to be village trustee, I really think you should look, you know, you need to be prepared to spend 15 to 20 hours a week, especially in the beginning stages. We're in the process of building a public safety building. And that has been a huge amount of time. So, you know, I guess it just depends on the projects you're working on and where you're at on how much time it is.
Finally, looking back, is there anything you wish you knew ahead of time about running for public office or serving in a public office? Or do you have any advice you'd like to give to someone running for office for the first time?
I feel like I had a pretty good idea of what it would entail by the time I actually got appointed. I'd been attending meetings regularly. I also was serving on committees as a volunteer. And I feel like that gave me a good understanding of, from the audience, what I expected. So if I was going to give somebody some advice, I think that would be it. Get involved, whether it's the library, you know, whatever your passion is. You have to be passionate. We were just talking about this before we started. If you're passionate about something and, you know, and you really want to make a difference and you want to make change or build on something, get involved, whether it's the school, the library, the village, the park district. Get involved, meet people, learn what's expected of you before you jump in, because once you jump in, you're in.
Thank you. Before we move on to Al, does anyone have questions for either Brenna or Sandy about something that they've said or about being a library trustee or village trustee? You can type your questions into the Q&A, or you can raise your hand and I'll call on you and unmute you. Any questions out there for Sandy or Brenna?
While we're waiting for that, Sandy, I'd like to second what you said about getting involved. And if you're interested in running for any public office, come to a meeting. I would say that's probably one of the frustrating things is when we're there at our meeting and we don't have anybody there in the viewing public, you know, that is looking to see what it is we do. So drop in a meeting and sit around and you know, learn, and then that's a really good way to see if that's somewhere that you're wanting to serve or where you feel you can make a difference.
Yeah, I'll just jump in with what Brenna said. The library board has figured out a way to meet both in person and on Zoom hybrid. Our next meeting is on the 20th of October. That's a Tuesday night at 7 p.m. And if you go to our website and click on board, you'll see our agendas. The Zoom link is at the top of each agenda. Of course, if you come to the in-person meeting, we will be in the main library area so that there is enough room for social distancing. And of course, everybody will be expected to wear a mask. So really, if you're interested in watching the library board in action, now you can watch it from the comfort of your home, or you can come to the library and watch it. So two options. October 20th is our next meeting, and our agenda is online, and that's where the Zoom link will be. I see we've got a question from Rhoda Matson. What qualifications are needed most for trustee? And I am going to assume that this question is for library trustee. If that's not the correct assumption, please correct me. Brenna, would you like to take that question first, and then I can add on?
Well, I think the number one, again, qualification is that you're interested, you know, in serving for that organization, and you know, you feel connected to that organization. But really, whatever your gift is always needed by your public organizations. I have a communications and public relations background, so I feel that has helped me in my role at the library. Some other role qualifications, you know, that we love to see but are not needed. You know, if you have accounting backgrounds and things like that, that's always that's always well received. But really, it's not something that's required. Again, it's really just if you're passionate about it, and it's also a wonderful way to learn about some of those things. You know, that with the qualifications that we may need, maybe something that you may learn along the way from different seminars and things like that are held by different organizations. You know, we're members of the ALA, the American Library Association, and they have wonderful conferences each year that help to equip trustees in all different aspects of running, being a library trustee. So again, it kind of is a two-way street there in you know, boosting your knowledge and also you giving your knowledge to help your community and the organization.
Yeah, I would second a lot of what Brenna said. Of course, the basic qualifications are very simple. You have to be 18, a resident of Midlothian, a registered voter. But really, whatever skills you bring from whatever else you've ever done in your life, we can probably find a niche for you. Certainly people who know anything about facilities or buildings are always in that's always in high demand because there's always something that needs to be done with the building. Anything that you know about finance is certainly useful. Public relations. Really, I think a lot of it is a commitment to learn, a commitment to read, because there's a lot of material in that board packet every meeting, to pay attention to detail, to ask questions when you don't know something or don't understand something, if something's not clear, because a lot of information is packed into that board packet. So yeah.
And I would just add to that I completely agree with you. Whatever position you're running for, we have a trustee on our board, Kathy Caveney, who most of you know, who when she's done speaking her turn every week, she says, I reserve the right to ask a question. and I think that's it. Put yourself out there and ask questions and learn, and you'll be amazed how many people are willing to help and give you information. And, you know, like we all said, passion, you know, if you're, whatever you're passionate about, it'll turn out well and you'll do well at it. You just have to apply it.
Okay, Rhoda, I hope that was an adequate answer. If not, please ask something else again. I'll go on to Vanessa's question. When are meetings held? Tuesdays. Vanessa, I'm assuming, again, you're asking about the library board. The meetings are held the third Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. That's for the full board. The committees are scheduled at the mutual convenience of the committee members and the library director. Usually each committee meets maybe twice per year, sometimes more if there's a big project going on, but whatever. And usually board members serve on 2 committees. So you may attend, 4 additional meetings per year. But the one that is regular and steady is the third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. The meetings usually run between 60 and 90 minutes. So somewhere between 8 and 8:30, we conclude. Very, very rarely does a library board meeting go beyond 90 minutes. Gary's question, it says you can be a trustee at 18. Have you ever had an 18-year-old on your board, and how was it? I do not think the library board ever has. Of course, I have not been around here for very long. I've worked at this library for going on 8 years and have been director for going on 4. Certainly, there's never been an 18-year-old while I have been around, but like I said, someone else on the panel may have a longer history than I have. As far as village board or library board, have we ever had an 18-year-old?
Not in the 13 years I've been there, and I know when I was appointed, I was the youngest in a while.
Not that I'm aware of for the village board either.
Me neither.
Anybody aware of school board or park district board having anybody that young?
No.
No. So it doesn't happen often. It could, but it doesn't happen often. Gary says, is there a fee to be on the ballot, and how many signatures do you need? I know that Alan is going to go over the signatures and probably also if there is a fee. I don't believe so, but I'll defer to Alan.
Yeah, I will address signatures as we go through the presentation, but there is no fee to file for any of the offices.
Okay. In the board meeting, this is another question from Vanessa. In the board meeting documents packets, is there a lot of legal language? Wow, that's a really good question. It depends on the meeting. Yes, sometimes there is. A lot of it is not legal language. I mean, a lot of it is my language as the director. I write a lot of stuff that's in the board packet, and I am not a lawyer, so it is in plain English. But there are some legal obligations that we have to fulfill each year, such as passing our budget, which does have a legal resolution form. So occasionally there will be legal language in the board packet, and that again, I'll second what Sandy said about Trustee Caveney. It's perfectly fine to always ask.
And we've been very fortunate as well at the library. We have a lot of our lawyers will come in sometimes when we have those more legalese written documents, and they will come into our board meeting and help to go through them and explain them to us. And if they don't have time to come into our board meeting, they will meet with Jennifer ahead of time and sort of break it down for her so she can explain it to us. But as Jennifer said, the majority of our items in our packets are our own library policies, and we do our best to have those written for the general public, and that's why we review them yearly, is to keep kind of altering those, well, not so altering, but making it so that the language is very understandable for the general public, because we want them to, the easier it is for our users to understand our policies, the better it is for our library to run and be used.
Yeah, one thing that really resonated with me with what Sandy said about there's no manual for being a village trustee or a library trustee. There's also no manual for being a library director. I sometimes joke that when I got promoted to director, everything I learned in library school was no longer relevant.
Yes.
Because instead of ordering books and planning educational programs, you have to know about finance and law and building
Bonds
management
and
and a lot. One thing I've discovered as a library director, and I hope that Brenna, you can attest to, is having the right experts to advise you. We have an owner's representative who advises us on building matters. We have a financial advisor who advises us on financial matters. We have an attorney, of course, who advises us on legal matters. So all of those experts who advise me also advise the board and can sort of demystify some of those processes.
And I feel like too, on the village board, we do have a lot of legal documents that we have to go through. We do have a village attorney all the time on the board, that can answer legal questions, but the joke is we're all Perry Mason. We're not attorneys. We just play one on TV. So, that's kind of my own little joke with it, but you do get to become very comfortable with the people that are there to help you. And our village attorney is at meetings. We also have other attorneys that we include when we have to make decisions such as bond decisions and union decisions and all of those things. So, there's always, even though there is, there's legal documents that you're getting, and sometimes they're 70, 80, 100 pages. None of us really understand it. We have to let the attorneys review it, and then we have to use our best discretion to be able to weed through what we can.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions. All good questions. I think we've caught up with the questions at this point. So, and we're right about at 7:30. So it's an appropriate time to turn it over to Clerk Alan Moskal, who has a PowerPoint to share about the nuts and bolts of all those signatures and those forms and when you need to go to the courthouse and all that type of stuff. So without further ado, Clerk Moskal.
Okay, great. So thank you. Hopefully, could one of the panelists just confirm you can actually see the presentation? Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, great. Because I'm not really sure what view we want to have this in here. 1 second. Okay, so thank you for having me tonight to talk about this. I want to thank Jennifer for reaching out and coordinating this event. I told her early on I thought this was a really great idea. We have a lot of different groups and boards in town who all will have the opportunity, or most of them will have the opportunity for someone new to join. And so Brenna and Sandy and Jennifer too, I think your feedback and your experiences and your stories are I would say completely on point and accurate based on my own experience. So speaking of my experience, I'm not an attorney. So what I'm going to share tonight is really based on my experience, really from two different perspectives. One from the elections that I've been involved in, and like Sandy, I was actually appointed, and actually I was not appointed initially, but I was appointed to a board or a committee, which ultimately got me or led to my being asked to run. But I have gone through 4 elections. So a lot of what I will share, some of this is personal experience, what I've learned on my own. Some of this is from, obviously a lot of this is from being the village clerk. I'm nearing the end of my first term, but one of my duties as the village clerk is being the local election official. So what I wasn't already familiar with when I became the clerk, I needed to quickly become familiar with. So a lot of the things here, it's really a combination of my own experience, having run and also being the clerk. So hopefully this is helpful. And as Jennifer said in the beginning, we'll have time at the end to talk about questions. I realize there's a lot of material here, so please do raise your hand or send the questions if you have some. So just a quick bit of an agenda as I was trying to think how best to frame this out to kind of walk through this. These are the general things that we'll cover. One is deciding on an office, and hopefully, some of the attendees tonight, you may have a particular office in mind, or maybe you want to learn a little bit more about some of the offices that are available and what they do, and hopefully I can lead you to that information here. And then filing for office, right? We're really supposed to be talking about the how-tos. So I'll share a little bit of general filing information. We'll talk about petition preparation and how those need to be formatted. We'll talk about signing and circulating petitions. Brenna touched on that, and so did Sandy, putting yourself out there, and you do have to collect petitions, and there's a couple different ways you can do that. And then some of the other things are document related. So when you actually file, you need to file something called a statement of candidacy. There's something called a loyalty oath. It's actually optional, but it's a good idea to include it. Statement of economic interest. That's a standard form. You actually have to fill out you have to get a receipt for it. And so this is a document that you have to actually take to the Markham courthouse, or to, if you're downtown on a regular basis, you can go to the county clerk's office and they put a stamp or a receipt on there, and you need that to turn in with your petition paperwork. We'll talk a little bit about circulating petitions. There's lots of rules and particular things you need to know about how to do that and when to do that and who can do that. We'll talk about filing deadlines, where to file. I'll talk a little bit about objections to nominating papers, because it is possible that you could file for an office and someone could object to you running for that office. Very little bit about campaign contributions. It's really just a few FYIs and some things to keep in mind. And then again, we'll have some time open for questions and things like that. So if that sounds like a good start, we'll jump right in. There is something that is published each year by the Illinois State Board of Elections. It is called the Candidates Guide, and they update it every year because there are different elections in different years. So based on the cycle and who's running, and because it's really driven by the state, there are all different types of boards that you could join. There are township boards, there are local municipal boards, there's library boards, there's school boards, and each one of those has their own cycle. Not everyone has elections every year. For example, I think the library board is situated similarly, but in Illinois, we have what we call continuity of government, and that's so you don't have your entire board turn over or be replaced in a year. So I'll use the village board as an example, and in one election cycle, so in 2021, we will have the mayor, the clerk, and 3 of the village trustees will be up for election, and then 2 years later, you will have the other 3 village trustees up for election. And so that's how that's staggered. And so the candidates guide is great because you want to make sure you always have the current version of it. If you're considering running for an office, it will have the dates specific to your election. So for example, the consolidated election is always the first Tuesday in April in those years, but it's not always April 6th like it's going to be this year because the calendar changes. So this is a great guide to have handy. I kind of call it the Bible of running for elections in Illinois. You can download this document from the State Board of Elections, and I have the website showing on the screen. There's a little bit of a snapshot at the bottom of what their website looks like. You can find that by going to, there's actually a header on the page that says running for office, and then you can find it in their documents. And if you go there, you'll see they actually have some of the historical candidates guides, and they don't change much, but they do keep up with rules and laws. So if things do change, as I said, you always want to be sure you're looking at this year's guide, not one from 4 years ago or 6 years ago, because something may have changed. So this is actually what it looks like. I realize the screen's a little bit small, but that's the cover. I think it's around 80 pages now. I recall a few years ago, it was we're close to 100 pages. So pretty intimidating. The preface here is a pretty good document, a pretty good, single page overview, I guess, that will kind of tell you what's in there. It gives you some good contact information if you have questions for the State Board of Elections. I would call it's probably the lightest reading, if you will, of the whole document. And I will say, I'm going to move on to the table of contents. It is helpful because if you are only interested in running for a particular office, you don't need to read all 80 pages of the documents. I think the table of contents here goes up to page 62, and the rest of the document actually has sample copies of all the forms that you would need for, for petitions, for statement of candidacy, things like that. And the electronic version of the document is great because I'm obviously sharing a snapshot of this on PowerPoint, but if you have the document open, it does have links in it in PDF. So you can go to the section you're looking on and you can click the underline and it'll take you right to that page, and you don't have to page down through 60 pages to find what you're looking for. So this table of contents, again, while it might look a little intimidating, if you have a general idea of what topic you're looking for or a specific office, it's super easy to kind of navigate your way through there. So that's just an FYI to try and not be too intimidated by that. So once you've decided to run, or if you're considering running, I know we had a question around how many signatures you might need for the library board, for example. What you want to do is you want to find, I'm going to go backwards, you want to find that office in the table of contents. And once you find it and you select it, it will bring up, it's a 1 or 2 page summary for that particular office. So I'm sharing the one for a local library board trustee, but it has all the pertinent information you would need to know to run for that office, along with, references to the certain documents you need. So for example, nominating papers or a local library board trustee. It actually tells you here for the petitions, which form you need. It tells you what the form number is for statement of candidacy. It tells you what the form number is for loyalty oath. And all of these are in the back of this document. And I'll show you samples of them in a moment, just so you have an idea what they look like. And I did mention the statement of economic interest. That is one that's unique in what you have to turn in. It's actually a form that you have to file with the county clerk, regardless of where you file locally for election. And they actually give you the form back. As I said, they put a stamp on it, and that's really around, it's to cover questions around any conflict of interest you might have with the governmental entity or library entity or school board entity that you are running with, or you're running for. And if you are someone like Sandy or myself or Brenna, excuse me, if she were rerunning, when you are elected, you are required to actually file a statement of economic interest every year. And so they manage that once you're elected through an online account. It's very easy. They'll send you an email as a reminder. You need to sign in and fill out your statement of economic interest. But a really important point to know for someone who is currently serving and who wants to run again is that just because you filled out your form for this year does not preclude you from having to turn in a statement of economic interest when you file your paperwork if you were going to rerun. So you have to fill out another one and you have to get a stamp on it. I know, some individuals may work for a state agency or government agency, and they need to fill these out for that job as well. So it's possible one person could actually have, 3 or 4 or 5 statement of economic interest they have to do. But that is a really important document for running, because you could potentially, an objection could be filed, or your papers could be reviewed and not be, you could become ineligible to run for the office you're looking for. This is also the page that would tell you what the qualifications are to run for the office. It would tell you what the signature requirements are for your office. It'll tell you the key filing dates. So when you actually can turn in your petitions, it will tell you where to turn them into. And it will discuss the terms of the office you're running for. And it gives some background about when that term would begin. And if there is any other information about campaign disclosure or things you might need to file with the State Board of Elections around fundraising or things like that. So each of these pages is unique to the role of the office that you're looking to run for. So it's important to find that one. It's also some interesting reading if you want to know for different offices what the requirements are. In many cases, the petition pages are very similar. They may have different columns or headers at the top, depending on what the office is. But these are, again, this page will really direct you to the right place. Signature requirements, for example, on this one for the library board, must be signed by at least 25 legal voters in the incorporated town, village, or village commission form of government or township. So that's pretty straightforward to know. I just need 25 signatures, and that's pretty straight and clear cut. Some of these may vary. So for example, if you are running for a mayor or a trustee position in a municipality, the number of signatures you're required to get is actually based on the number of votes that were cast in the last election for that position. So in the case of a village trustee position in the April election, the requirement is 5% to 8% of between 5 and 8% of the number of ballots that were cast in the last election for a village trustee. So you might say, how do I know what that number is? And I'll cover that in a second. But just pointing out that that is also something that's on this kind of single page. So within this huge document, that's the candidates guide, there really are a few pages that are pertinent to an office once you have an idea which office you want to run for. This is just a snapshot of what these documents look like. I realize they might be a little small on your screen, they are on mine, but it gives you an idea of kind of the text that's on here, the different types of information that you might fill out. Again, copies of these are in the candidates guide, and you'll see every one of them in the upper right hand corner has the reference to that form number, so that you know when you're looking at your qualifications page, you know that you've got the right form and you're not going to mess that up. I talked a little bit already about the statement of economic interest form. This is something, again, that we file with the county clerk. And so I do have the link on here on this office, on this page too. The county clerk's office, you can go through cookcountyclerk.com, or you can also type in Cook County elections, and that will take you to the election section of their website. It's actually a very helpful and informative website. They have a lot of information for candidates or for elected officials. It's super helpful too. You would be surprised how many people do not know if they are registered. They do not know where they are supposed to vote. And you can find all of those things through the Cook County Clerk's website, all kinds of helpful information. So as I mentioned, this is something that you present to the clerk's office, and they would stamp it. Right up here in the upper right-hand corner, there's a box. That's where the clerk's office would stamp it. They give you that form right back again, and that is what you would file with your other paperwork for filing. So we'll talk for a couple minutes about circulating petitions. So if you're new to office, it is something that that might be a little intimidating. Once you know what the position is and you filled out your petitions and you have an idea of how many signatures you need, that's where the fun begins, and you have to start collecting petitions. So there are a few rules around petition circulators. So you don't actually have to collect all of your own petitions. You can have other people circulate for you as long as you follow the guidelines and the rules. You can do a mix of those. I think that depending on the office you're running for, depending on the number of signatures you need, my own experience, it's been actually good to get some of my own, but it's also good to get signatures to have someone else circulate for you. If you find out you need 200 signatures, let's say, that's a lot to collect in a 45-day period. If you're someone who works a day job and you're really interested in giving back and serving on a board, it could be intimidating or challenging to collect signatures. So you don't have to collect them all yourself. You do have to be 17 years of age and a qualified voter. That doesn't mean you have to be registered, but you have to be able to register to vote and at least 17. I think that one has always struck me as odd. I would think she should be registered, but it's not a requirement. The most important requirement to collecting signatures is the circulator has to personally witness all the signatures on that page. And this is really important. What that means is you can't knock on someone's door and a husband or a wife answers the door and says, "Oh, sure, I'll gladly sign your petition, and hold on, my husband's in the family room. Let me take this back to him and have him sign it." It would be great if he can sign it, but he actually needs to come to the door, or you need to go in. You, as the circulator, have to witness every single one of those signatures on the page. It's really important. Your petitions can be challenged. People can come to the place that you file your paperwork. They can ask for copies of your petitions. They can check to make sure that every person on that page is a registered voter and that that's their address. They can, if they really want to challenge your petitions, they can actually go down to the county clerk's office and have them compare signatures. So it is really important that you witness those signatures. You actually have to sign the bottom of that petition page. That's basically an affidavit that says, "I witnessed all these signatures." And then you have to have that page notarized before you turn them in. So really important. I did put those two I did put these two here in bold print because I think they're the most important points to remember in circulating. In terms of timing, there is a window that you can circulate petitions. So, and we are in that window right now for the April consolidated election. So you cannot circulate them any more than 90 days before the last day for filing of the petition. So what that means for the April 6th consolidated election, we were able to start circulating petitions on September 22nd. And the filing period then is December 14th through 21st. So that is when you would turn those petitions in if you want to be on the ballot for an office in the April election. There are a couple other points on circulating petitions. A petition circulator, you cannot circulate for more than one political party or for independent candidates in addition to candidates in a political party. So what this means is, let's say that Brenna were running again for the library board, and there were also, I think I heard Jennifer mention, in the case of the library board, there'll be 3 positions open. Let's say there were a group of 3 candidates that decided they wanted to form a party together and they were going to run as one ticket, if you will. Brenna could not circulate petitions for herself and for that independent party group. So you do have to, if you do ask other people to help you circulate petitions, you do need to make sure that they are not circulating for you as an independent candidate and for a party. It would be perfectly fine if they were going to circulate for Brenna, because if she were to run again, and let's say Susie Johnson, I'm just making up a name, was also going to run as an independent candidate, and another person, someone could circulate for more than one candidate. They just can't mix independent candidates in a party. I don't recall my recollection, and Jennifer, you might know this for sure, but I don't ever recall there being a party per se for a formal legal party form for the library board. But that has happened in our local municipal elections, you know, for village roles. And I believe it's happened in some of our schools in the past as well. So how many signatures do I need? I mentioned, you know, for the library trustee, of course, it's very clear because it says you need 25 signatures. But in the case of a village trustee, let's say it has to do with the number of ballots that were cast. So again, the candidates that guide will tell you what you need. I do have a link here again back at the Cook County Clerk's website. There's a big section header button on the homepage that actually has election results and election data that you can filter for. You can go back for years and look at the various elections. I have a snapshot here for Midlothian Library Trustee Board. This was from I believe this was from the election 2 years ago. And this will actually tell you who got how many, who got what votes, what the percentage was, the number of votes that those individuals got, and then here it will say total votes. So that would be the total number of ballots cast. So if you were looking for to run for an office that said you needed between X% and X% of votes, this is the number that you would look for to be able to calculate your math. So that data is there if you happen to want to run for an office and it has one of those tricky numbers of signatures that you would need. Petition circulator requirements. There is a statement at the bottom, as I mentioned before, at the bottom of each petition page that has some information that basically summarizes that you witnessed each of these signatures and your presence, and they're genuine to the best of your knowledge, and that was the person who said they were. And you basically have to sign this, and then these are those pages. Each of those pages is notarized by a notary public, and that has to be done for those to be valid petition pages when you turn those in. Petition circulators, you also have to say what your address is and where you live. Obviously, that's so that they know you are qualified. Petition signer. So as I mentioned, this would be someone you would ask to sign your petition. They obviously have to sign their own signature. I covered that already. You cannot sign for someone else, even another member of their family. They must be registered voters in the municipality or the board area geography that you're running for. So you have to be, if you're going to run for the Midlothian Library Board, our library board is this, we have the same boundaries as the village. So a resident of Midlothian, any resident of Midlothian should be able to sign those petitions. I mention that because it's a little bit different with school districts. We do have, and Midlothian's a perfect example, we have school districts that span multiple towns. So the grammar school districts, for example, in Midlothian, we have school districts 143, which are mostly Midlothian students, but we also have students in school district 142, grammar schools. Those schools are located in Oak Forest, but they're Midlothian residents. So it is important to be sure that whatever the office is you're running for, that you are collecting the signatures of people who can actually vote for you for that office, because they could again be deemed invalid signatures, and that's not something you want to happen if you put in all this work to run. On the petition page, you have to indicate your address. You can write it or print it. It doesn't matter. You have to put your address, the city, town, and state. I do have a suggestion in here, and I'll show you an example of a page, but the less margin for error you can create in creating petition pages, the better off you will be. And by that, I mean there are probably certain pieces of information on a petition page you can pre-print or pre-populate before you go out and start collecting petitions if you need a lot of them. That just minimizes the mistake that, or the potential that someone might accidentally put a wrong city or an address in a slot there on the form. So a petition signer, as I said, they have to be a registered voter at the address shown on the petition. So you can't sign your name and put your parents' address or your friend's address. You actually have to live there and be registered with the county. Signatures can be stricken. It does happen where someone may sign a petition and it turns out that they realized, oops, I'm not registered here, or I put the wrong address, or for whatever reason, or they may recall that they already signed a petition for this candidate that someone else was circulating. So you need to strike those from the page, and you can draw a line through it. And then there's actually another form you fill out that says, I'm such and such candidate and I'm submitting my paperwork, and on this page of my petitions, on this row number, we're striking this signature. And it's just basically a confirmation that signature should not be considered or counted. As I mentioned, this is an example of a petition page for an independent candidate. So this is what you would use if for a library board position or a trustee position. As I said, it's a good idea to pre-populate as much as you can. So at the top, obviously, there's candidate information. I am Sandra Crowley, running for village trustee office. And you can type that in here. And for the over on the right-hand column, you'll see with a city, town, or village, and then county. You could actually type in Midlothian for all of these rows in the county of Cook and make a couple copies of this. And then you have your pages that you can go out and sign. And that will also help you collect those a little bit sooner if you are knocking on doors or you have people waiting in line, let's say to sign for you. They can just sign their name and address, and the rest is all standardized already. I mentioned earlier, this bottom section here is where a notary would sign. You would sign this, right, in the presence of a notary, and they notarize it before you turn them in. And then petition pages need to be numbered. That's the last step you want to do before you turn in your petitions, because you might find yourself in a position where you have too many signatures, so you're not going to need every page. Or you might not want to have to deal with, if you had a page that had a signature you struck, but you had enough and you didn't want to turn that one in and fill in that extra form that's required for a stricken signature, you might just leave that one out and not submit it. So numbering the pages, important, but it's one of the last steps that you want to do when you turn in your petition. And this is just an example. I asked Sandy and she said she didn't mind. So this is actually a page of her petitions from the 2019 election. And I've highlighted the areas. You can see this was all pre-populated on a typewriter. I happen to be the circulator for this page, so I happen to know who some of these folks are, but you can see that this was all populated already before we went out to start getting signatures. And again, it just kind of saves a little bit of time, and it eliminates any margin for error, which is what you really want to. Okay, so submitting the nomination paperwork. Once you have your documents together, there is actually an order you are supposed to turn these in. And it sounds kind of crazy, but again, someone could actually come and request a copy of your petitions and object to them because they're on order. Petition pages should be original in size. And again, this information is all in the candidate's guide. They should be attached, so you should probably staple them at the top or use a binder clip depending on how many pages. This is the recommended order that you would turn them in: your statement of candidacy, the loyalty oath, the receipt for your statement of economic interests. Those are not pages that have numbers. And then you will put your petition pages in, and then any of those certifications, if you had to strike any petitions, those would go after your petition pages. And again, these should be neatly fastened together at one edge, and I would recommend something like a staple or a binder. Deadlines and locations. We're kind of back to this page again, specific to your office, but these are, again, it's all included on that one page about where you are supposed to file. That's an important thing to keep in mind. So for the library board and for village positions, they actually file with the local clerk. That would be me in the case of Midlothian. However, if you are running for a school board position in one of our school districts, or you are running for a school board position or a park board position, they actually submit their petitions to the county clerk. So important to look to see where you're supposed to file them. And again, for the April 6th election, the filing dates are December 14th through the 21st. I did mention a little bit about objections, and I think I actually duplicated this page. I apologize. You have two of those on there, sorry. Let me talk about objections just for a second. There are some reasons that people could object to your petitions. It could be because you did not witness the signatures. It could be because you have names of individuals or addresses that are not within the boundaries for the office you're running for, or not part of that municipality. You could have your petitions objected by someone else who is looking to run for the same office, and they're just looking for a reason to try and boot you off of the ballot. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So again, it's a really good idea to follow the kind of the rules. There is a section on objections in the guide that you can read that has a little more information about how that works and what the process is. I did mention earlier, I'm not an attorney, but I do need to mention, there are some obligations for campaign financing. So if you are running a campaign, if you're in a heated campaign for a library trustee or a village trustee or a mayor, and you're going to be doing fundraising, there is a general amount in the state of Illinois that if you spend or raise, and it's additive, more than $5,000 in any 12-month period, you have to file as a committee, a political committee with the State Board of Elections, and then there are monthly reporting requirements for the whole length of your campaign. So 5,000 is the magic number. It's not just money that you would collect or solicit in contributions. It could be money you spend. So if Brenna spent $2,000 in costs for, maybe making up flyers or mailing out political material for her run for office, and she collected $3,000 of contributions from people to help her costs, that would put her at the 5,000 mark, and she would be required to file. So just important to keep that amount in mind. Again, there's more information about this in the guide, but it is something to keep in mind if you are in a position where you may have to put out, you may have to solicit contributions, or you may have to have expenditures or spend money for campaigning. So I realize I've been doing a lot of talking. I will stop there and let Jennifer take over and see if we have any questions.
All right. So yeah, I will definitely invite you to put your questions in the Q&A or raise your hand, and I will unmute you. I just want to make a couple of my own comments or questions of clarifications to Al. In addition to the online candidates guide, I will have packets of the forms that you need at the library for those running for library trustees. So starting tomorrow, probably not first thing in the morning, but by noon, I should have those available if you'd prefer to pick them up from the library rather than downloading them from the packet. But as Al said, the packet is quite convenient because of the hyperlinks in it. One thing I do want to clarify, there are 2 table of contents items that say the word library. If you are running for library board in Midlothian, the page that you want to look at is the one entitled Local Library Board Trustee, Municipal or Township. That's just kind of a quirk of Illinois law that there's two different kinds of libraries. We are the municipal kind, so that's the kind that you want. One of the things on that page, it says that the term for trustees is 6 years, unless the library changes that to 4 years by a resolution. Our library board has changed that to a 4-year term by resolution, so you would be running for a 4-year term. Al mentioned the notaries. Notary services are something that the Midlothian Public Library generally offers. However, due to the pandemic, we've suspended this service for the public. That being said, if you are a library trustee candidate, our notaries will notarize your petition forms for you. But when you come to the library, you will need to specify, I am a library trustee candidate seeking notary services, because like I said, due to the pandemic, that's one of the few services that we're not offering at this point. Al, I had a couple of questions. The county clerk, that is the courthouse in Markham that they would go to file their SEI, their statement of economic interest.
Yeah, so that is the most local one, right, to Midlothian. But if you are someone who is downtown on a regular basis and that the county clerk's office downtown is more convenient to you, you can use that one. And I think they do have a list of locations on their website, but Markham is the closest one to Midlothian.
Okay. At the bottom of the petition where the petition circulator signs, if the candidate themselves is the circulator of that petition, the candidate would sign that for themselves, correct?
That is correct, yes. And it is perfectly okay for a candidate to circulate their own petitions. What you don't want to do is, obviously, and this is for any document really you need notarized, you do not want to be the candidate and notarize your own signature. So if you happen to be a notary as well, you should not be notarizing your own signature, and it's probably not a good idea to notarize the signatures of a relative either if you're if that's just again to eliminate any potential challenges that someone or objections somebody might make to your petitions.
And don't sign it before coming to the notary. Then you have
Absolutely
to sign
correct.
in the
Yes,
presence of the notary.
yes, you need to sign in their presence. Yes, great point.
One more question, as that's at the very bottom where it says campaign disclosure. Reports must be filed either on paper or electronically with the State Board of Elections. What is the campaign disclosure?
So that's around specific to fundraising. So that's again at the $5,000 mark. There are different rules for campaign disclosure. There's a form. I don't even want to quote the number. I can't remember, like D2 or something like that it's called. But you literally have to submit monthly. You have to create what they call a political party, and you have to submit monthly what your income and what your receipts were, and you have to do that every month until that quote party is dissolved after an election. And if you have funds left in your campaign fund, in most campaigns, they're usually in a deficit position where they did collect some money, but they spent more than they collected. There are rules around if you collect money, but you don't spend all of it, you actually have to give it to another charitable organization or another campaign organization, and you have to tell the State Board of Elections who that is and what the dollar amount was. So that's why I mentioned the $5,000 ruling.
Okay. There was a lot of content in Al's PowerPoint. It's a fantastic PowerPoint. This session is being recorded and will be shared through the library's YouTube channel if you want to review the presentation. Al, would it be possible to get a PDF of your PowerPoint to also share through the library's website?
I sure will, and you may already have it as well, Jennifer, but I'll also send you the copy of the candidate's guide too, so that people have the current one if they want to.
Great. Okay, so let's turn to our audience and see what questions there are. One of the questions has already been answered. Are we going to get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation? Yes, Vanessa, I will post it on the library website. We have a section on the right-hand side of the library homepage for news, and I will post it as a news article. And then also, if you find us on YouTube sometime tomorrow, I will upload this presentation the video of it to the Midlothian Library YouTube channel. Gary asks, are you allowed to have a spouse of a library employee be on the board? I don't know the answer to that question. It's never come up to my knowledge. Do you know, Al, or would that be something that the library would have had to pass a resolution on?
I think that is something that the library would have to pass a resolution on. I know our village board does not have that in our ordinances. I think if that were a rule, it would be in your library bylaws. I would think.
Yeah, to my knowledge, that does not exist. Any such policy or resolution. Other questions? Anybody want to raise their hand and ask a question out loud? All right. So just to recap, look at the library's YouTube channel, look at the news section of the library website sometime tomorrow, or maybe on Monday for the PowerPoint and for the recording. Around noon tomorrow, I will have the packets ready of all the forms if you want to pick one up. Al's email address is on the PowerPoint. My email address can be found through the library website, midlothianlibrary.org. And so can all of our trustees. So if you have further questions for Brenna, her library email address is there. And I would assume that Sandy, yours can be found through the village website if anybody has further questions for Sandy. So I want to thank Brenna and Sandy and Al for your presentations this evening. I'd like to thank all the attendees. And if you have questions for me, please, about joining the library board, I'm really excited to see newcomers interested. So please direct those questions to me. Strongly urge you to attend a library board meeting. If you're interested in any other form of local board, attend one of their meetings. That's the whole idea of a public board, is they are open to the public, so you can watch them in action. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Have
Thanks
a
a
good
lot.
evening, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.